Tonight is the April 10th Committee of the Whole. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the Amity Elementary Select Band and Spelling Bee finalists.
Hang out there for a second while we do the spelling bee. So this was the final word of the 2017 spelling bee, and you're going to see Luke winning the spelling bee with this word. All right, we're going to put Luke on the spot and ask him to spell it one more time. Was it elusive? Where's Miss Evans at? You remember what the word was?
Thanks for that.
Okay. Yeah.
ILLUSIVE. Elusive.
There you go. You have to say it the second time. So I'm pleased to introduce Samantha Schlauch, who took third this year. Samantha, you were a fifth grader. Would you like to tell the board of directors anything about the competition?
What I'd like to say is that it was very tough being, like me and Cole were tied, and then I got one of the lead.
And remember, we had about 60 to start the competition, so being in the top three is pretty amazing. And Jennifer Pritz finished second.
I felt a lot more nervous this year than last year because a fourth grader won last year, so it put a lot of pressure on the fourth graders.
You represented fourth grade pretty well. And then finally, the champ, Luke Armstrong.
Well, at times I got nervous, but I think I studied pretty well.
And we are going to have this plaque in our lobby. And as you can see, Jennifer's name is on it twice already. And she's a fourth grader.
Wow.
No pressure, so we're expecting big things out of you next year. No pressure. So directors, do you have any questions for our spelling bee finalists? I told them be ready.
Well, I do. How exactly do you study for a spelling?
Well, usually I just do like 2 rows per night on the list. Well, usually for days a week I do 2 rows per night, and then at the end of the week I basically review the whole list.
Right? A lot of work. So now, do you like have the vocabulary for all those words too, or? Your vocabulary could be better than mine with all those words you got them memorized. So.
Any other questions for them? All right, great job, you guys. Well done. And Mr. Harris, do you want to hand out the certificates? And I'll get this off. Don't be shy, moms and dads.
All right, down through.
Also, at the end of the presentation, if we get a discount, check out, we have extra Dairy Queen. Blue Patel has donated, I think, 68 sandwiches. Wow. Feel free to take one. I do have to stay and get the pictures.
That doesn't mean you're paying Hey, Scott, you want to shut this down? Yep.
Oh, he's a technician.
Just turn the button off.
How many degrees do you need to do that? Very good. Chief Technology Officer.
Being a clock technician.
That surprises me, does it? I love your face when you see these things. It's $300
$100
an hour.
Show up an hour?
I love watching
Get
you.
surgery.
I love watching your face when you see when these costs.
I wonder why school.
Want to thank all the parents for bringing out their kids tonight. It's a beautiful night. If you'd rather be doing something else than being in here with us, now would be the time to go. We're out of here. There's 2 people left.
Like 3 people left.
Yeah. How do you miss that?
Okay, we're going to move on with our meeting. Mr. Martino, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Wolf. Mrs. Bites. Mrs. Bites. Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Martino here. Mr. Otis O'Neill. Mr. Otis O'Neill. Mr. Potts.
Here.
Mr. Rathke.
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Ms. Twardowski.
Here.
Mr. Wolf.
Here. Mr. Coaxum is also here,
Oh,
just for the record.
thank you. You're not on my list.
No, it's okay. Okay, the procedures for public participation are printed in the inside of your front cover of your program. Attachments, if there are any, are always included at the back of the room for your view. Please don't take them with you. If you would like to address the board, please approach the podium, sign in, state your name and address for the record, and you'll be afforded 3 minutes to address the board. Mr. Potts, will you do the honors of it? Under announcements, agenda edits, there is one under 9C1A. Change the name from Kellyanne Ayton to Brian Dre. The salary is the same. That's my only agenda. Are there any other agenda edits from board members? Hearing none, would like to announce there will be an executive session following the committee of the whole to discuss personnel issues. If there's anyone from the public that would wish to address the board? Seeing none, superintendent's report. Mr. Harris.
Okay, good evening. The MEC Garden Project has broken ground, and we'd like to thank the High School Ecology Club and JP Mascaro for funding the project. We'd like to recognize Karen Worrell, the 5th grade teacher at Amity. Is she here tonight? Okay, you're sitting in the back. Didn't see you. Come on down. She wrote and received a $5,000 grant. You want to tell the...
The grant is through the. Are we good? Okay, perfect. The grant was through the John Templeton Foundation, and I would like to thank Holly I never could say her name right, Zajac and Lisa Kasner, who helped me to find the grant. It's for $5,000, and the grant will be used for iPads for elementary classrooms.
Very good. Thank
I
you.
look forward to getting the iPads and using them as soon as they get here.
Okay. Thank you. Back to nature, the Daniel Boone AEC Nature Center dedication, since he's coming up right now, will be April 22nd at 10 a.m. on Earth Day.
You bet.
Mr. Miller, would you like to say a few short words?
Short words? Yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Hit the hit the timer, please.
Yeah, we are looking forward to this. I hope all of you can make it. There will be the best donuts in the county there for your refreshments, I guarantee it. We're going to start in the lobby with the Daniel Boone portraits that have been painted by Sue Goodling. We're going to dedicate them and then work our way back to the Nature Center and dedicate the garden, the new pavilion, the outdoor classroom, the trail, the new bridges. So a lot of fun, a lot of good times, and then wear your jeans because we'll work afterwards. So bring your favorite garden tool with you after the dedication.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Wolf, I can see you've got a question. You're dying to extend this further here.
I'm just wondering how donuts fit into Earth Day. I would think like you would be handing out apples, maybe broccoli or something like that.
Yeah, I do get the no-fat donuts.
Okay, thank you. If you haven't received it yet, stop by your local school. The Daniel Boone newsletter is out and about. So if you haven't received one yet, each school has a stack, so check out the newsletter. Last thing, spring sports have begun. Tennis, baseball, softball, volleyball, track. Let's go out and support the student athletes, please, because they're out there. So we have lots of events. It's nice weather. You don't need a coat, hat, scarf anymore. Not like football. Go out and support our athletes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Is there any public comment on the superintendent's report? Seeing none, we'll move to finance. We'll be voting on these items at the end of the month for the voting meeting. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Mr. Wolf, so for item D, actually we just had this conversation at CNI. So the eSchool Plus on here, the agreement is for 2 years. And then the discussion we just had was about perhaps looking at other software options for data. I know Mr. Matz and Mr. Hurley working on that, so I'm not sure we want to enter into a 2-year agreement. And also on the agreement terms, it does say that written intent to terminate this agreement must be received 180 calendar days in advance of the agreement end date. So if we do go forward with 1 year, we need to make sure we get that. And if you do plan to switch to a different system, we want to get that go to this in a prompt fashion. And I also had a concern about, this can be answered later, but in fact, I was going to have data migration, but that doesn't need the answer to actually get a new system. So, but I was concerned about the 2-year.
Well, it's a good point. Anytime we approve anything, it's always pending solicitor review. So if you do have comment or concern, to give to Mr. Subers, in advance of that meeting, I'm sure it'd be appreciated. But the question of whether we go to 1 year or 2 years, if we're unsure, we should be doing it at 1 year instead of 2 years.
I mean, Mr. Matz, is there a problem with 1 year?
Yeah, the reason we did, I can hear about, you can hear the reason we went with
2 years is we're currently evaluating potential vendors that we may switch to or continue with the IU for eSchool Plus. The 2-year time frame is basically built around the amount of time it would take if we were to change vendors. This school year we engaged in some preliminary meetings with potential vendors. Next year would be time to fully dive in with those. Changing student information systems is a large undertaking, so we want to have time to meet with teachers, meet with the nurses, guidance counselors, so that allows us next school year. And then the following school year would be the time frame where we'd be looking at the data migration if we were to change. Because as you know, right now we're doing scheduling, that sort of thing. So you actually have to start the migration during a current school year that you're almost running 2 systems concurrently as you phase out one, bring on the next. So the 2-year time frame is basically built around the fastest amount of time I thought we could make a change if we do that, simply because rushing a change like this would be very costly, very disruptive if we don't make sure we're dotting our I's, crossing all our T's. So that's really where the 2-year time frame came from there.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
If you're agreeing with that, then that's fine.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation.
Mr. Wolf, item 7F. This started like 2 months ago, maybe longer. And initially it was three recipients at one amount. 2 weeks ago it was 3 recipients at a different amount. And I kept asking about the accuracy of how it was done. We were assured it was done accurately. And then 4 days ago it changed again. So in executive session tonight, I would like to discuss the details of how these amounts were arrived at.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. Are there any other questions? Obviously, 7C won't appear on the consent agenda. That'll be voted on as a separate item in case that question is going to come up.
One other item, Mrs. Feitz isn't here, but I noticed an email right before I left to come here that she wanted to speak out against this $10,000 scholarship, so just so everybody's aware, they ought to read the email before the voting meeting.
Hence why it won't be on the consent agenda. Okay. Is there any public comment on finance?
Albright, 239 Lilac Lane, Douglasville.
Can you just press that button, please?
It is pressed, but it's green.
There you go.
Is that better? Okay. 239 Lilac. I'm confused about item 7F as well. I think it's only fair if the public knows how these numbers were derived from, who, what is the merit actually based on, was it performance reviews, who reviewed them, and why didn't other people qualify? Why was it only four?
Okay, the building-based administrators are the ones who can qualify for this merit pay. Basically, the evaluations are done by the principal or Mr. Hurley, the assistant superintendent. It's in various parts. The last part is the building SPP score. So if any building-based employee rank went from proficient to distinguished, distinguished was the qualifying factor. So these 4 individuals met that distinguished mark.
According to
The-
the assistant superintendents, most of them are principals, correct?
Well, yeah, those are the building-based folks, the principal, assistant principals. So the money was part of what the board allowed me to have. I think it was $35,000, $30,000 as a pool of funds that was divided up amongst the staff at their initial evaluation, all administrators. It went from 3% to 1.5%, and then the remaining pool was set aside for anyone who reached a higher level of distinguished on the state
Okay, so
evaluation.
that money was already earmarked for that purpose?
Yes, ma'am.
That's where it's being.
Yes, it was done last year, yes.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, presentation by board members. Mr. Martino, is there any secretary's correspondence?
No, Mr. Wolf.
BCIU, Mr. Rathke?
Yeah, Mr. Wolf, so some highlights from the IU for the past meeting. We ratified an agreement with Upper Perk. The IU will provide Title I service to students who reside in their eligible schools over there. We ratified an agreement with the McKinley Group. Basically, we're going to be using them to consult. The IU has some rather old legacy Nortel phone systems that are getting very hard to support. So we're looking at replacing phone systems over there. We also authorized a new agreement with the Reading School District to provide another 4 years of transportation for them. And we've also approved the rates for next year, actually starting in July, for special ed, early intervention, and student services to districts. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Rathke. The Berks Career and Technology Center, I'll take that report. I filled in for Mrs. Twardowski. We met and we had a lengthy discussion about, there's an opinion, the opinion page for March 21st, and I meant to scan this all to you. There's a House bill that's working its way through legislation. And what it does, it gives equal credence to Career and Tech Center students, like the NOCTI exam that they must take, and that puts it on the same level as a PSSA. And there was, obviously there's some support in it from the Berks Career and Technology Center standpoint. There was one educator who's a board member from another school district that looked at it quite differently, and I have to say, in light of that, I was curious and looked into a little bit more of the bill. What his general feeling was is that the Career and Technology Center would be somewhat, if you want to coin the phrase, a dumping ground for those students that the sending district did not feel would be able to pass the PSSAs in order to inflate their numbers. So there's probably that discussion lasted almost 45 minutes, just back and forth between the different districts and what their feedback is. So, of course, this isn't law yet. It's just a House bill, but I will scan this. I know I gave this to James. I was hoping I would have it for you tonight, but I didn't get a chance to do that. We also had a visit to the House project. As you know, as Mrs. Twardowski probably has reported, the House project there's one every year, and the Career and Technology Center students actually build a house from scratch, from the ground up, and the house is pretty well near its completion. It's supposed to be done and ready by the end of this month in April. So we actually could see almost the finished product. They were just installing the kitchen cabinetry and some of the other hardware. But that'll be going to auction, and of course, the they use the funds from the auction to reinvest into building materials and so forth for the start of the next project. So it's a pretty exciting thing for the kids, because if you're in the electrical program, you're doing the wiring. If you're in the masonry program, you're doing sidewalk pavers, interior work, tile work, carpentry, of course. All the different trades have a piece of it. So it's actually very good hands-on experience, and the house is really interesting. For those of you who may not know, the Career and Technology Center owns a parcel of land. I forget what the name of the road is. It's right down the street. It's literally down the street. We took a school bus from the Career and Tech Center down there to take a look at it. And I had to say, sitting in a bus seat was interesting. But they have enough land there to build a number of houses and make their own little development. So it is quite something to see, and it is a very good experience for our students. So that was really the highlights of the meeting. Otherwise, it was pretty much routine approvals and so forth. We have a couple of retirees. Anybody have any questions for me? Thank you. Our legislative report, Mr. Martino.
Yes, Mr. Wolf. This is a little long, but it's all about the state budget. And since we're having a budget workshop later this month, I think it's important that we understand the numbers as far as what we can anticipate from the state this year. The State House has preliminarily proposed the 2017-18 budget that was passed along party lines. That's $800,000 less than that was proposed by Governor Wolf. And it's, in fact, even slightly less than this year's budget by a few $100,000. However, it still leaves a $700 million budget gap for this year and a $3 billion gap next year, which I've yet to hear how we're going to close a $3 billion gap. No new taxes are proposed, but this is an annual falsehood because by the state underfunding school districts, it forces school property taxes to increase. And there's no mention in the budget of House Bill 76. The House is waiting for Senate Bill 76 to be introduced, but the Senate's been on recess, so they've done nothing. They have no budget, even preliminary, prepared. Additional revenue, again, seems to be based on smoke and mirrors with anticipation of additional gambling revenue, which did not materialize this year, and it was supposed to, and further expansion of private liquor sales. There's $100 million increase proposed for basic education subsidy, but there's also a proposed reduction in the transportation subsidy of $50 million. And before anyone gets excited about an additional $100 million, you need to remember there are 500 school districts to share in that, and even straight lining it would only yield $200,000 apiece, but Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and a few others always get the lion's share of any increase, and even a few $100,000 would do little to offset our $1 million plus Peasers increase. The legislature also wants additional studies done on the governor's proposal to charge municipalities which use the state police in lieu of the local police force. And Senator Rafferty, our local senator, has introduced Senate Bill 406, which would require a 2/3 majority vote of the school board in order to raise school property taxes. And that's even slightly different than a 2/3 majority. His bill reads that it's 6, even if all 9 members aren't present. So just a few differences between what the governor's proposed and what the House has proposed. The House, like the governor, has proposed a $100 million increase in basic ed, $25 million increase in special ed, $50 million cut in pupil transportation, a few other things that are the same. The differences basically are the House budget contains a $20 million cut for pensions from the governor's proposal. The governor provided a $240 million increase, but the House wants less. There's a few other differences, but right now, there's, until the Senate comes up with a budget, and then they sit and try and reconcile the differences before they can sit down with the governor. So when we do our budget workshop, I have no idea what Mr. Small is going to use for what he anticipates getting from the state. It's going to be total guess.
Right now, I'm using the numbers that PDE has on their website for basic ed, it's 100,000 for middle, 65,000 for special ed. That's what PDE has posted currently. That's what we're currently using.
Any questions for Ms. Martino? Thank you, Mr. Martino. Is there any public comment on the board member report? Seeing none, we'll move to personnel. We have some retirement resignations. Anybody have any questions or on the personnel? C1A has been altered, the name is changed, but pay rate is the same.
C2 is based on, it's predicated on receiving a grant. Do we know if we're getting that grant yet, Mr. Adams?
Not yet.
Any public comment on personnel? Move to 10 programs. We have your monthly head count statistics, monthly enrollment comparison. Any board comment?
Mr. Wolf, can we go back, can we, so the item C for the calendar was revised again, whereby I believe we took off the 2-hour.
There was
Yes.
a notation for December was.
You know, I mean, that's my opinion. I think we should keep 2 hours. I think if you saw our survey results, which I think everybody did see, was that most of the parents wanted it at the end of the day as opposed to the beginning of the day. But I mean, the number, we also had a very high response for thinking that was important to have that. And you also look at our survey that we did with our staff, that was another comment that they had, was about training. And we've heard that from several different sources that they feel that there's not enough time to get proper collaboration and in-service trainings. So I would argue that we put that back in, have it at the beginning, have it at the end of the day, that the majority of parents who did survey requested.
Let me chime in before you respond, Mr. Harris, because I agree with Mr. Rathkin. I don't like doing surveys because you're not going to please everybody, and I said that last meeting, but if you do a survey and then you don't do what the survey tends to say, then why do we do the survey? So the majority of the people said, let's do the 2 hours in the afternoon. So because we didn't get the answer we were looking for, we did away with it altogether, it seems.
No, not at all. What we're doing is, and I don't know how much of this I could say, with the realigning of the grades, that's occurring. Can I say that?
That has occurred.
That has occurred. There's more grades now that are in the same building, so we're looking at team training from the onset of what we have now that's realigned, and then taking a look at that next year, because this will be one of the first years that we could take similar grades that are in the same building and train them together. So taking a look at that and see what kind of PD we need after that. What I was trying to do was a little bit of aggressive by adding more PD in, but now that we have grades aligned a little more, we could do professional development. And at the high school, we have the Apple training that's going to happen, and then a year of training.
Could you stop me 1 second?
Yes.
So when would you be able to do this collaboration training in any elementary schedule?
Well, on the in-service days,
So actually, the actual in-service day, not
yes.
the 2 hours. I mean, typically we have other in-service items that need to get addressed on those days as well, right?
Yes. Just like the beginning of the school year, we have training scheduled, but we always find a way.
But here's what Mr. Rathgeb and I agreed on a couple of weeks ago, too. We knew about the realignment when we did the survey.
Like I said, we
The
were,
realignment didn't come out after the survey,
no,
so
and like I said, we were being very aggressive with our PD
why didn't we just keep it?
because I didn't think I could have the votes, honestly. That's an, I didn't think I could have the votes.
I'm glad you said that because I would like to generally state that people in general, administration, teachers, public, should not believe that they know how the board will react to decisions like this, and instead put together the plan you believe is best from the input of the teachers, the administration, and the survey that was very clear. We had near 1,000 or 900 responses, which is pretty significant, and put together the plan that's best for the students and for the teachers. And I heard last meeting there were several teachers that stepped up and said that they wanted the training and needed the training, and several others mentioned it to me after the meeting. So I would say, don't worry about what you think the board's going to do and put together a compelling story that's best. And I think it's clear that what's best and what several board members have just said is that they think you should keep it. So
When you do consider bringing them back, like, I wonder if you consider maybe of the 8 in-service days, maybe halfway start, half early dismissal?
Once again, what we try to do is appease, we try to appease everyone, and we can't do that. We're trying to bring in more professional development where it's lacking. So once again, we felt that aligning the grades gives us a greater opportunity this year or next year for training, seeing how that goes, and then adding more PD after that. So we're trying to be a little more conservative. I tend to sometimes be a little more aggressive with things, so I need to take maybe baby steps in making people feel comfortable with certain things.
Yeah, I had reached out to these 2 teachers. Unfortunately, they were both in the same building. And they actually preferred the afternoon because if you have it in the morning, you have a 2-hour delay. So once the kids come, discussion's over. Where that restriction isn't necessarily there in the afternoon, it's because it's their time. So I thought that was a pretty
I had
compelling
that
argument.
discussion too with a constituent, and the thought there was, it does keep you very on task when you have a specific time frame that's very productive, 2 hours when you know it has a,
I think the reason that the vote was last time was because of the morning as opposed to the afternoon.
Well, there was also the last comment of students losing some seat time,
That was all the
which, right, and we did take that under, yeah, there was some concern over students, there was some concern over students losing seat time, and we realized that, so we're taking it a little slower and working with the grades that are aligned, and then going from there.
Any other board comment? If not, is there any public comment on programs?
Laura Lorena, 367 Bucket, and I'm sure most of you aren't very happy with me because of the calendar. Since I'm the one who posted it on the RTV. Just as a parent, because I'm involved in this at this moment, I looked at the calendar, and when my first thought was, well, when would graduation be? The first Friday, that first Friday at half day, or would it be the following Friday when school would be done on Monday, and then it would be 4 days later on Friday? It's just something that happened to pop into my head. I don't have anyone graduating next year. Only because I do recall a few years ago when graduation kept bouncing between two different dates. And I know people who had already printed out their invitations and were reprinting them. Because you know Murphy's Law, well, first of all, I don't really like the idea of a last day of school being a Monday on a half day. But Murphy's Law will be, we won't have any snow days next year. And that we will be done on Monday. And then when would graduation be? Or if we could maybe take the Friday before President's Day, which is currently listed as a half day, make it a full day off, and then make Tuesday the last day, on all those last days. Because then even if you have 3 snow days, your last day is Friday, there's graduation. Just my thoughts.
Our luck would be 4 snow days and you'd still be back at Monday.
No, because then it takes away vacation.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to curriculum and instruction. Mr. Kurtz?
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. We met before this meeting. Our new pattern is on committee of the whole nights. We meet from 6 o'clock to 7:30. We discussed PSSA testing. We received a presentation overviewing the technology in our schools. Heard an update on kindergarten registration. Learned about the new immunization requirements from the state. Had a very preliminary conversation about growing the JROTC program in high school. Had a similarly preliminary conversation about computer science and potentially expanding opportunities in high school in that regard. And then we saved the last 15 minutes of our meeting a new curriculum instruction committee initiative called the Faculty Roundtable, where we're inviting staff members, teachers to come and join us for discussion, and they can bring topics to the floor. Have a nice open discussion, trying to involve more stakeholders in the conversation. And what we're going to do is save guaranteed 15 minutes at the end of all meetings, and invite staff to join us at the table. If there is no participation and nobody wants to come up, then we'll just continue with what we normally do at our meetings. I discussed this with Mr. Poole and also the committee. Glenn sent an email out to faculty just to let them know that the CNI committee is open to your participation, and if there are any other topics that they'd like considered by the committee, they can send them along and we'll see if we get them on the agenda. But the administration has really taken a much more active role bringing ideas to the table in the CNI committee, and we appreciate that, and we recognize that folks who sit around that table now have really good ideas in the district, so why not reach out to everybody and see what they can bring back the ideas and maybe we can forward the open for open as a concern and complain actively for the staff. So that's the CNI.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. Any questions for Mr. Kurtz?
I was just going to ask you, thoughts on how to get some of the faculty to come?
Well, I think sending an invitation is a good first step. I don't think a lot of them know that their participation is welcome in these meetings. And in the past, it always hasn't been. It's often been kind of closed off to board members, but we're trying to liberalize that a little bit now. So we'll see where that goes, and of course, hopefully, like this. What was that? Oh, if you want to bring donuts, Mr. Scott, you're more than welcome.
I think that's Dane's department.
There'll probably still be left over. Public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to the extracurricular committee. Mr. Rathke?
Both item 12, extracurricular, and item 14, finance. So no reports on those from, nothing's changed since the last meeting. So we're meeting actually for both of those on the 18th. Extracurricular will be first. Looking to possibly try and wrap that committee up. We'll see if that gets done or not. And then the budget workshop is open to, of course, anybody as well as all board. Our goal is to have a interactive computer here, so to speak. So Mr. Small and have us liberally apply some numbers to some spreadsheets and see where things take us. So, and if the board members have any suggestions for that night, please bring them with you as far as areas that you feel that we can try and trim some costs if we can.
I'd just like to repeat what you said, that it's not just the finance committee, it's open to the entire board, and I think as many members as can make it should try to make it. It's important.
Yeah, the budget workshop is something we've always used to try and really push the budget along.
I do hope, Mr. Harris, I hope we can nail down maybe our staffing as well, that or at least get close to getting that nailed down. Obviously, that's our biggest budget, right?
Well, last year, we agreed to use the end of March's number, and I have those. So that's what we're looking at.
I went back through the minutes, I couldn't find that. The last minutes I saw from last year still said the end of May.
End of May? Oh, okay.
Any questions for Mr. Rathgeb? Any public comment? Seeing none. Personnel?
I took my two together and skip over Ms. Prayowski.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So facilities met prior to this meeting, and we had an update on the Eagle Scout project with the obstacle course for the JRTC, and they're going to be building a couple of the obstacles the first week in May. And then the majority of our topic of conversation was on security concerns and camera upgrades and key card. And we've been talking about that off and on for quite a while. The estimate for the card access came in around $100,000, and that would be for 39 doors at all the different schools. And we discussed whether that would have any type of alarm system or notification if some of the doors were propped open or if the door was left open, because we have had that concern in the past, and it seems to make sense if we're going to spend that money that there should be some type of alarm. So we're going to go back to the company and get a quote for the alarm and see what that would be. And then for the cameras, we looked at the current cameras replacement and at the middle school and at Noxie, and I'm sorry, not Noxie, Amity, and it was around $8,000 for Amity and about $30,000 for the middle school. I'm sorry, the middle school. The high school's already done. Sorry. And so what we want to do, though, we asked Casey to go back and take a look at is, are there additional cameras that are needed in these schools? And then also look at a floor plan layout for Monocacy as well. And so look at it on the grand scale. Get a number really for everything, and then put it into the 5-year capital budget, see where that plays out, and come back. So we've been talking about it off and on for a while, but we do feel that it's important, but we want to make sure when we do it right, we do it once, and we play that out the way it should go. We're going to be replacing some of the lights at the high school and hallway and gym with LEDs. That's going to be a summer maintenance project. And we also briefly discussed signage at the different schools, and administration is getting costs to replace the signs at the different schools with the electronic scrolling signs. And we briefly discussed admin office move, and we expect to have a RFP back for next meeting for the architect of record. And if we wanted to look at some of those things, we could ask an architect to look at that. We haven't moved further with that, but that was brought up in the original quote to potentially move the admin offices to the high school was at $500,000. The facilities committee doesn't really think that that's necessarily something they want to pursue, but it's out there if people wanted to do that. So that's, like I said, the majority of our discussion was on the camera upgrades and the key access, card key access.
What is can you give us a preview in terms of administration moving? So the high school doesn't seem to be very feasible. Is the alternative they stay here, or?
I don't necessarily know that there's an issue with them staying here and at that cost. I mean, certainly, I think there's many other things that we should be doing before that. I would have to defer to Mr. Harrison where those numbers were derived from.
It was mentioned a few months ago about the admin moving to the high school, and we looked into
A
it.
few years ago.
Well, okay, a few years ago. And I knew the cost would be substantial to retrofit that space. So we weren't really prepared for next year to move. We're just looking into it, just getting some idea. But we're fine, sharing a space right now at River Rock. If we have to move upstairs or down the hall, we're fine right now because there's other things to do with $500,000 in the district. Like we need turf.
That $500,000, so would that mostly be cordoning off that part of the building, putting up walls to make sure that the...
Construction. Well, the whole, from layout to finish. But right now, we're looking at the true cost. So Casey will work with the architect down the road and come back with a couple plans.
And the technology department is still high school, right? District technology staff.
I'm sorry?
The technology, IT for the district, are they still headquartered at the high school?
They're at the high school, yes.
And special ed, are they at the high school or not?
Across the hall from IT.
Okay. That's like the administration annex.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Borowski, I have a couple questions. So for the ROTC obstacle course, what exactly are they looking to put in?
The two obstacles that they're putting in right now is a monkey bar station and a hurdle station. I think it's 3 hurdles and 3 jumps. And that's the first two. There's supposed to be 8 total. And I'm not sure.
A low crawl, where you can crawl on the ground. That was one of them.
He's got something back here, so.
They're still checking the insurance on the fire pits and the 5 fences.
I mean, is this on an area that is secured?
The obstacles would be, there's 8 total obstacles. The Eagle Scout would be helping with 2 of them as part of the construction. The area that they would be installed and constructed at is the upper area where the old long jump and pole vaulting areas are that are currently unused by any of our athletic teams or by anybody. So they are far enough out of the way that if somebody really wants to get into them, that they have to work to get up there. And the insurance company okayed everything. There's no big, 30-foot climbing walls or anything like that. It's just all your basic, everything's just a few feet off the ground, or at ground height.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a few too many to drag, you can't make it ever pick it up there.
We know where you'll be next Friday.
Right.
Yeah, it's not even a pit that you have to swing across with this big pile of muddy water in it, nothing like that.
That's not mutter at all.
Apparently not. It's not that exciting.
We also can't go to track meets in our stadium. So never mind.
Okay, so another question. So with our potential security upgrades, has there been a conversation between Mr. Martino's committee and facilities committee as far as what they feel that their input is what priorities are as far as our security upgrades?
Well, Case and I talked about maybe having a joint meeting with the security committee, but we haven't really we had a meeting or two, we've actually been in a meeting. We had a discussion. We still haven't heard back from the VA, I believe, as to certain questions we had, and So no, I guess we have not, but we have talked about it, if we're gonna have that committee, maybe have a joint meeting.
You only have so much in funds. And I know there's different, our weekly reports, we know there's different schools have different priorities, and so make sure we're, maybe get a consensus as to where we should be kind of focusing first, so.
We're kind of prioritizing, at least I'm going to do the outside, secure the perimeter of the building first to control who can get in and out and so forth, and then, work on the inside for cameras and so forth. So it's kind of like, lock it down first and then, start augmenting the inside. They're not mutually exclusive projects, so they can happen together.
I do know, at least at the middle school, I've seen things that, that they are concerned that they'd like the cameras to be working. I don't know if that's quite as a priority at the elementary centers. I'm not speaking for any of the elementary principals. I think it's important, but I don't know if it's as much of a priority necessarily as middle school or high school, but certainly at the middle school, I know that that's of concern.
Two things, Mr. Harris, I don't want to make a separate phone call to Mr. Subers, but if you're speaking with him, would you remind him to contact the district attorney to get that response that we've never received? And back to the budget workshop for a second, for the principals, the building principals, I think you should be there, and if there are facilities projects that I know Mr. Miller has several that he has interest in, that's the time to bring them up. I mean, if they're not in the budget, you're not getting them. So, let's see if we can get them into the budget.
Quick question about the obstacle course, specifically the ROTC program or JROTC program more broadly. Is there, although I'm hearing that, it's only a few feet off the ground, I'm thinking about how litigious our society is. Is there a waiver, a liability waiver, or release that the participants will sign or have already signed as participants in that program?
I don't know.
By virtue of being out in the heat in those uniforms. I don't know, we might be opening ourselves up to liability. It's good to make sure that we can work on that if at all possible. But just an observation.
I see Mr. McKnight making a note, so.
Well, the exciting part was Mr. Harris had the idea that all the building administrators would be the first one to go through the course and see how they would be the ones to test it.
Rob will lead the way.
I would believe the PE training, that's already been a year into it, I don't think we've had any issues.
I think we talked about it when they started up, but I don't, we can get, Mr. McKnight, can that's the answer.
Yeah, I think we kind of rejected the rappelling wall and things like that, but yeah. So this is all ground obstacles, so. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Dasky for facilities? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move back to Mr. Kurtz for personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Let me start by covering the report from tonight's meeting. We had a wrap-up discussion on the organizational charts. There's been some back and forth, and there's been some question from the administration and from the committee about what we wanted from the administration. Originally, it started out, give us your dream setup for your administration. What would it look like? And eventually, it of course became, well, what's your dream contingent upon what is realistic, I guess. So came back and Mr. Harris proposed another organizational chart, which is the one that is up for approval at the end of the month. I believe this will go into effect at the end of the school year, over the summer. And a lot of operational responsibilities would shift to be under the purview of the business office. The business manager would become the CFO. That's pretty much the overview there. Originally, there was some talk about having a contract support or a contract management officer. But academic officer, so somebody to coordinate all aspects of the curriculum, as well as to, generate new ideas and handle some of the work there. Additionally, tonight we reviewed the proposed salary caps for administrators and provided some direction to the administration in that regard. We very briefly discussed some job descriptions, not in any depth, but the question was posed to the committee members if they had any comments, and there were one too many. Finally, we had a discussion about the hiring process and posed some questions to the administration there. We'll probably continue to have discussions about that. Looking ahead, coming to an agenda near you will be a recommendation for abolishing certain positions that have either long been unfilled or whose roles have been taken over by other staff or not. This isn't a reduction of any personnel, it's just cleaning up our own practices behind the scenes. We have some job descriptions that have been on the books for I believe decades and haven't had anybody filling those positions in as much time. So those are recommendations from the administration will come to committee next month. Looking at the rest of the items on this agenda, item D is most of the title changes. We also discussed that tonight. Let's see. We have a chief academic officer beginning this summer. And we're going to talk about some of these items. I believe they're subject to executive session conversations after the meeting. It's just an overview. That's all I have.
Any questions for?
Just for clarification, when you say we're going to approve the org chart, for me anyway, I think of it as the org chart is just nothing more than an outline of the reporting structure. So I'm assuming that we're going to approve all the underlying positions first and then do the org chart, or is that all done simultaneously?
Well, the job descriptions, we're still in the process of just making sure. This is actually a question I posed tonight to Jim, or Mr. Harris, asking, well, if we change the reporting structure, then isn't it necessary to change the job descriptions to reflect that change in direct report, supervisor, and all that? And he said that it isn't necessary to do because it's approving the job descriptions and it's all the supervision of the superintendent, all the discretion of the superintendent. So I don't think we'll have to necessarily approve the job descriptions first. The idea behind the organizational chart, the changes won't take place immediately either. It could be this summer that that go into effect.
But some of the positions are new.
Right. Those will have to be.
Yeah.
The only new positions are the chief academic officer position. Truly new. That is setting aside the title changes. The chief academic officer and the transportation coordinator, which we discussed last meeting and we'll continue to discuss, I imagine.
Okay. I thought there was
It's approved.
another
TC was already approved.
No, correct me here if I'm wrong. There was talk about doing that, but now it's going to continue to be under proposal from the administration of buildings and ground supervisor, consisting no change in that job description. We're not going down the director of contracted services as was originally bandied about.
Any other questions? Public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to the very exciting policy review committee.
Indeed it is. So real quick, we have a handful of policies coming up on first readings, and they're mostly geared towards special education. And I think Shelley will attest that we've extensively debated these and reviewed these. Mr. Hurley is certain is tired of hearing me and seeing my emails. But those are all moving forward, which is good. We're bringing closure to those policies. Couple things of late, the board had asked us to talk through potential for a grant distribution policy, which was sort of akin to Mr. Martino's concerns about approving work orders and such. And I think after some rigorous debate, we sort of landed on our preference that we wouldn't necessarily have a policy, but that we would rather have awareness of all potential grants, as well as a spot on the agenda for upcoming grants, the ones that we've achieved. And I think Mr. Small was there, who sort of regained our trust in that he has a tight policy for and a tight process for funding and granting funds for those grants. And then we're speaking of not necessarily the big federal or state grants, but more so the one-offs that teachers and other administration go after and get. So we're, at this time, we're not moving forward with any developing any policy for that. And then lastly, we're currently reviewing our costs for PSBA. Mrs. Bites brought this to our attention and reached out to them directly, as originally there was a contract that the policy reviews would be done in 3 years, and we're currently in year 3, and we're roughly halfway through. And so I thank Mrs. Bites for bringing that up and getting that conversation started. And now Mr. Small is actually looking into our costs and what we've spent over the last few years on that, not just policy review, but just PSBA costs in general. And then he's also looking at what we have in terms of specific contractual agreements for that. Next meeting will be in 2 weeks, on Monday.
Can I just supplement something, Mr. Scott? The reason why I was concerned about the contract being drug out was because the contract policy for services were contracted at a rate that was contingent upon our membership in PASBA, which is about $12,000 a year. So we were eager to get through the contract so that the board could consider whether or not we wanted to maintain that relationship with them. And we cannot do so as long as I'm holding that contract over our heads. It is, so incentive here for us to get them done. And they have responded that they were going to try to get it through them.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Scott? Any public comment? Seeing none. Transportation Committee, Mr. Opus O'Neill unfortunately had an family issue he had to take care of. He can't come tonight, so the next meeting will be April 26th here at 6 o'clock. Is there any public comment on transportation? Old business. We have minutes to approve. Questions, discussions? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to new business, and I believe many of these you would like to speak to, Mr. Martina.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. The first item was the PSBA voting delegates. The conference for the voting is Friday, October 20th. It's probably as much travel time to the Hershey Convention Center as the time spent there voting. But I think it's worthwhile to have us participate. And I sent this notice out to the board a couple weeks ago. So if anyone is interested in going, I went last year, I was the only one that went. So if anyone's interested in going this year, speak now, we can put it on the voting agenda. Friday, October 20th. Yeah, but we have to submit the names soon. Well, I'd like to go if no one else does, and there's still room. There's room for 2 delegates. So between now and the voting meeting, if someone else wants to go.
Did you have 2 and an alternate?
Well, we only have 1 right now, so we don't really need an alternate.
Well, if, say, 1 couldn't make it, you could have an alternate to fill that second.
I don't know, I'd have to find out, Scott. that's that item. The next item was hiring an outside agency to perform desk audits. I've been asking for desk audits to be performed for 4 years now, and I don't know that any have ever been done. And I keep saying we have 17 secretaries for 17 administrators. And I think it's worthwhile, if nothing else, to validate that we have what we need, or have more than we need, or less than we need. And at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was Mr. Dowski, said if we're going to do it, we should hire an agency that does it to do it right. Please, yes.
All right, so I'm not 100% certain the definition of desk audit. I know, I know what I think you mean, but I think it's hard sometimes for, you're going in and you're asking somebody, well, tell me what you do, so I know whether or not I need you. I think, and there's certainly people here that work in the business field and, the private sector. I mean, to me, it's more of an efficiency study. And, there's people that specialize in Six Sigma or other proficiency and efficiency processes, and to me, it makes more sense. I don't know that the superintendent or the assistant superintendent can sit there and say, well, yes, we need this secretary to do all this, but if you're looking to improve efficiencies, then I think you bring in an efficiency expert to do that. That was where I was going with that.
And the other nice part about doing that is it takes away the familiarity of local people doing it with people they've worked with day in and day out. So it's something I'd like to see considered and have the administration report back on it by the voting meeting.
Yeah. I have started looking for organizations. I was doing more research on it. It was more, what I found was more in the government Office of Performance Management. So I need to find the local regular mill business person, also someone who may have worked with schools in the past. So I am looking. So I should have something. And I'll work with Lauren in putting something together.
Yeah, in fact, if you could at least find out some estimate of cost by the budget workshop too. The next two items actually they can be done as one item. And we started talking about it earlier about River Rock expansion and the administrative office's relocation. And what I'd like to say about that is, since we're already here, and Mr. Kurtz said a couple of years ago we wanted the administration under the high school, and it never happened, but we're here now. The question in my mind is I can't see spending extra money now to move to the high school, since everything seems to be working here. But if River Rock does want to expand, I think the question becomes which side of the building the administration's on, which leads us to the next item, which River Rock, my understanding is they're using the third floor, or whatever floor you call that, for testing, but they're not paying for it. And I think they should be. They're a for-profit organization, so if they're going to use our space, I think they're going to be paying for it. And which comes back to which side of the building administration should be on. If they're going to use that upstairs, why would we have them go up and down the stairwell around our administration offices instead of us being on the other end of the building? So that's just something I wanted to weigh in on. Utilizing local contractors. At an agenda meeting, I happened to be sitting there when Mr. Small brought up a bill for some repairs that had been done, and it was an 8-hour bill that included a lot of travel time to go get the part and bring it back. And the contractor was not local. And I'm curious as to why we're not using local contractors. We've got a lot of contractors down along the Stowe area of Old 422. Pottstown's an industrial town with a lot of contractors, and I know there's a lot of contractors between here and Reading. Why are we using contractors from the other side of Reading? I don't understand that. It just seems like we're adding to our cost for not only repairs, but for vehicle service and stuff.
I can speak in very general terms. We look for the best price. Local, I mean, it's hard to define local sometimes. Is that Berks County? Is that PA? I mean, how far is local? And those who have the expertise in what we need. That's probably one of the toughest things. So, but once again, we can look at it on a case-by-case basis. And I know we try to get 3 or 4 estimates. We do bids.
Preferred vendor.
Preferred vendor, I mean, yeah, people we've used in the past, they become our preferred vendors because we have a history with them. They accept the way we pay. So that's always a catch, how we pay.
How do we pay?
Well, through the PO system, sometimes they may want to,
Credit card?
well, yeah, but sometimes they may want to get money right up front. And
Oh, okay.
and also Casey has a relationship with people that they do quality work. So we could get someone local who may not do the quality work that's up to his standards.
Isn't there any type of state certification or qualifications in order to work with a school district? So
No.
you're not going to necessarily call every company that's going to have people with the background checks certified and all that in order to come in here. So
That's a good point.
yeah, people.
We're looking at, I guess, one invoice. Is this something that happens all the time? Like, do you have any ideas that, like, how often we use contractors that are way outside of our area? Or is that more, is that more the exception versus the norm?
It seems like we're using contractors out of the area more in the past, say, 2 years than we used to. We used to have, I think, people that were more local. I would just like to see us research, are there local contractors that do quality work that we could utilize?
And do we have I would think at this point, this district's been here a while, a lot of the contracted services are probably repeat. Do we have a list of preferred vendors that we go to, or, is that why we?
Yes, we use.
I mean, Berkshire Mechanical, every employee they have has every clearance that they need, whether it's plumbing, electrical, HVAC. So I know if I have any needs for them, I can get anyone here that has all the certs. The other contractor we use, we go to electrical, there again, they all have all their certifications. Halter Landscaping lives in Birdsboro, does all of our mowing. It took us a month and a half to get all of his staff to have the clearances. And some of them don't even have all the clearances yet, but since they're outside of the building, they're not inside the building, so they're not required. So they've done all of our snow plowing, all of our mowing, they're working for GCA. Can't get more local than that. There are times where the contractor comes here, needs a part, and has to run the supply house. It wouldn't matter if that contractor is from Birdsboro or from Allentown. If they don't have the part in their truck, they're going to have to go to the supply house and get it. It's what happens. So, and as Jim had said, there are certain contractors that do very quality work and stand behind what they do. And a lot of those service technicians, I have their cell phone numbers, and they'll talk me through a lot of things, so I don't have to run them down. They're 15 minutes away. They're 20 minutes away. It's not like they're driving an hour and a half.
So you, in answer to Mr. Martino's basic question, you prefer local vendors?
If
Prefer
I
to
could use
use
somebody local, absolutely. But there are not many companies anymore that want to invest the money to have every one of their employees that have the clearances that we require as a state entity. It's an expense. I know Berkshire Mechanical, it's like $75 at their cost for every employee every year to get all the clearances. So it's an expense. A lot of companies don't want to do it.
Commissioner Martinez's point, though, on just listening to everything else, perhaps we should take the time to have an approved vendor list that we have. A couple electricians, a couple plumbers, and we know, what their maximum rates are, and maybe we have some kind of arrangement where they can't charge us more than a certain amount of travel time, but they're already approved. they're an approved vendor, we have not necessarily a contract, but, some kind of maintenance agreement in place that we have some parameters.
And the one other thing too, just to have the familiarity of the schools, they can come here now and they can immediately go to where they need to go. They know who to talk to, they know everything. If I'm calling multiple vendors all the time, it is very difficult and very time consuming. We actually spend more money in the long run that way with that as well. It's just one more thing to think about.
Right, that's one. And I can say, my background is operations. One of the things you do if we don't have an internal HVAC, electrical, plumber, a whole crew on our own, we go outside and find companies that we could work with on a consistent basis. And they have the certifications, they have the experience, as Casey said, they have the knowledge of the facility and the history to go in, speak to McKnight about something that's going on at the high school, or work with the assistant principal and walk to the location, familiarity, cost-wise. Now, there are always situations where, like you said, they don't have a part on the truck and a situation occurs. However, that working relationship that develops is priceless. So, like I said, we will work with local vendors all we can, and we'll get a preferred list. I mean, I asked for that when I first got here, and I saw where we spend our funds over the last 3 years, and it's been pretty consistent with certain vendors. Now, other vendors might not like that, but these vendors that we use, just like for your home, you may call the same plumber all the time because you know Joe, and Joe consistently does a good job and gives us a good price. But we could put together a list, so if Casey decides to leave, the person who comes in and replaces him can take over.
How does this work vis-a-vis GCA? So they're the ones who provide the labor, except for they can't, and we always pay for the equipment, the supplies?
It varies with GCA. For example, the painting outside the high school, that was a contract, tell me if I'm wrong, Lauren, that was a job that was a little bit too big for them, so it was like a contracted service. So they'll go out and find the painting, and then we'll charge us back.
They find it, and then we pay, right. They do all the legwork, and then they send us the bill.
Right, but anything that falls under general maintenance, they do.
Right.
So, like,
anything that's listed on the contract that is required under contract for maintenance, if GCA chooses to have a contract come in, then they have to submit substantiation to get credit for those hours against their invoice. But if they can't do it themselves, in the case of the painting, routine painting per the contract is theirs, but this project outside is beyond routine painting, hadn't been painted since the building was built properly. So that was ours.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item, just would like to have a discussion. If there's any interest or thoughts of moving board meetings for nights other than a Monday.
I'm not sure why we would have that discussion, but quite a few board members are being replaced.
That's true.
And we have, our schedule has been advertised through December, right? So I think this is a conversation to have next
Yeah, good point.
Well, this is Mr. Harris' idea, this, at least you want to explain why.
Well, I brought it up because of the committee meetings. We would keep the same deadlines administrative-wise in submitting information, but we have a number of committee meetings now that were more than in the past, and they're kind of stacked on top of each other. And at times, when I spoke to Connor about moving up the personnel meeting, it made sense to have it before the CAL, and he agreed, so he made some quick adjustments so we could get it done, because if a committee meeting is after the CAL, we're trying not to do any more edits, so then it takes another 3 weeks before it even becomes before the board, when the committee may meet twice before the next CAL. So moving the committee of the whole meeting or any meeting to a Tuesday or Wednesday gives 2 days for possible committee meetings for Monday and Tuesdays, and then it could fall into the board meeting.
Well, I think, probably the first year, committee meetings used to be on different nights. But, as we all know, our time for the board members, our donated time is limited. So I think we started to have our committee meetings the same night as our regular board meetings. So I think that's what's changed as opposed to the, we used to meet on different nights for the committee, so we would have more time before we put board meetings, but it just made more sense from, a selfish point of view of a board member, we're going to be here at night, we're here at night.
I explained to Mr. Harris that actually it was Dr. Sanker that suggested to have the meetings the same night as the committee of the whole or the voting meeting. So it'll be one less night a month or two less nights a month that we had to attend. The only difference is we went from like 4 committees to like 8 committees.
Double.
And perhaps we have too many committees.
Well, that was going to be, if we're done with this discussion, that was going to be one discussion I was going to transition into with the comment that Mr. Rathgeb had made about that he's looking to seeing the end of his extracurricular committee. If I don't want to,
I just wanted to voice my support. I think we should be on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
I figure that's going to be an unpopular opinion. No, I think that, the personnel committee meeting, that should be done by the end of the year. And then decisions free.
I'd like to weigh in on Mr. Harris's suggestion as one of the people who wanted all the meetings on the same nights as the voting meeting at the Korea Hall. But I think there is some merit to that thought that it's on a Tuesday. Even if we try to move the bulk of everything to a Tuesday night, not wait, again, I believe it should be the next board's decision, but consider the fact that then if you have to squeeze in a meeting before a decision's made, you have that Monday cushion. So it's kind of building in a cushion, even though you could still try to keep everything on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, say, but then you have some overflow, or for like times like this, when we have these extra committees actually on the way. So you can offer to meet also this. So I'd explore that if I don't know.
any other public comment? Seeing none, is there presentations by the public on any issues? So a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.